Welcome to the 29th episode of the Bluegrass Blues podcast. I'm Amy.
And I'm Jesse. I think we should start out with it's big news for one person, but we have the first trillionaire in the world, and that's Elon Musk. That's like as of June 12th, because of his public offering of SpaceX, his personal net worth went up to more than $1 trillion. And if you look at it that way, he's got more money than probably 3.5 billion people in the world.
Yes.
It's just...
And there are 8 billion people in the world, so
yeah,
almost half the people of the world is what his net worth is.
Right, and this is one person who's, who's taken advantage of he's everything that the MAGA people are supposed to hate. He's an immigrant, he came in illegally, was essentially taking American jobs. He is a womanizer. I'm sure he was involved in the Epstein files somehow. He's got like baby mamas all over the place. And he's always on drugs.
He's a
drug user.
Racist.
He's a racist.
White supremacist.
Well, he was born and raised in South Africa,
right.
So what else do you expect from him? And this one person has more money than almost half of the world's population. Yeah. And so why we start by talking about this is now we have to go and look at what's happening in terms of things like what the Republicans are doing in Kentucky to screw over the budget process. It's just, we have a state budget.
It's about $15 billion a year.
Right. The state budget is $15.4 billion a year. And it's like this total exercise in how much less can we do for the people of this state.
Right.
It's taking away funding for hospitals. It takes away funding for schools.
Medicaid, TANF, foster care.
Right. Just
other
the
social service.
Environment stuff. Uh-huh. So, we have a trillionaire who's buying elections, buying politicians. I'm sure he's contributing to the Andy Barr campaign because Andy Barr is the kind of politician that's easy enough to buy since he's a Republican candidate. And, you look at...
Not just a Republican candidate, because we had some Republican candidates that were not supported by Trump,
right,
and therefore Musk, and they lost.
Right, and that's also the interesting part about this, that this is... we are in the stages where I think everybody realizes that our government is purchased by the highest bidder, and the people of the state or the people of a certain community don't have enough money to be part of that bidding process. So I'm sorry I went off on a tangent here, but what strikes me about this election that we have coming up, especially for the Senate in Kentucky, is it's probably the most racist and bigoted campaign I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's just flat out, we hate gay people, we hate trans people.
We hate black people, we hate brown people.
Right.
We hate women.
Yeah, so, it's just...
We hate people with disabilities.
And you look at and this isn't like, he's not secret about this. It used to be that Republicans would be more discreet in their evil or in the things that they do, but Andy's just coming flat out.
You mean they'd hide under a white hat, pointy hat?
A white pointy hood, yes.
A hood.
Yeah, but it's amazing that we're going through this campaign now and we see what's going on in this election. But let's talk about the budget for one. What are they doing now?
Well, and they've cut so much that our governor is now moving $30 million so that he can ensure that temporary assistance for needy families funds stay for 1,500 Kentuckians so that they don't lose TANF benefits. And then he wants to continue to financially support 8,841 children in foster and residential care. those seem to be pretty important vulnerable populations that we should continue to support, but not under this Republican legislature.
Yeah, and
These are wants, not needs, right?
right. It's what does what does Kentucky want, or what we want just to be treated fairly, but what does Kentucky need? And we're not addressing what our needs are.
We haven't for decades. And honestly, I think that the state model is mirroring the national model, in that the concentration of wealth continues to consolidate with wealthy white males in the state, and the rest of us are just completely screwed.
Mm-hmm. But the thing too is that there is a concentration of wealth, yes, but there's also a tax structure that allows the wealth to be accumulated this way.
Mm-hmm.
And we as citizens are responsible for that tax structure because we keep electing people who are making more tax breaks for billionaires than anything else. And the thing is that the comments that the money isn't there to do certain things is a lie. It's a flat out lie, because I'm going to throw a comparison here. Okay, we talked about the Kentucky budget. It was 15.4. The annual budget is $15.4 billion. New York City has a budget too. Kentucky has what, like 4.5 million people.
Mm-hmm.
New York City has about 8.5 million people. The budget for New York City annual budget is $124.7 billion. Compare that. It's almost 10 times more than what the whole state of Kentucky has as a budget. And there is plenty of wealth in New York where this is not, and it's not all on the backs of the property owners in New York, which, if you own property in New York, you're in better shape than a lot of people in Kentucky are, because the value of property is so high there. But it's not just on, property taxes. There are taxes on billionaires. What they're doing is making rules for, like, if you have a luxury apartment and don't live in it in New York, which a lot of rich people do, you have to pay another tax on that, which doesn't exist. And what they're doing in New York are certain things, like they're starting daycare for like 2-year-olds. And this is like just part of the budget process. And they're not really cutting services. They're talking about giving people free access to certain transportation. They're doing things to make sure that ICE isn't breaking down neighborhoods. The money is there, and it's not that issue. And if I'm going to pile on to Kentucky, New Yorkers are paying taxes for Kentuckians. Kentucky does not contribute the amount of money that New Yorkers pay for federal projects, and
all blue states
are subsidizing red states,
right,
like Kentucky, like West Virginia. And Kentucky and West Virginia, the Trump vote was like through the roof. At least 65% in Kentucky, at least 70% in Virginia, West Virginia, yeah. Meanwhile, the blue states, they did not go for Trump in those numbers. So blue states are funding poorer red states. Red states are getting less services because they keep electing Republicans who will take more services away from them and take that money and give it to rich people. And you will end up with essentially more billionaires, more trillionaires.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
And what was the other thing that we were talking about? The gas tax, for
Yeah,
example.
so 37 municipalities in Kentucky have requested that Bashir continue a gas tax reduction because, all of us are... By the way, I just took a big road trip. I'll talk about it more later, but there are so many fewer people on the roads right now. The hospitality industry is really suffering. All the outfitters that for whitewater rafting and stuff that I went to are just saying it's been an abysmal spring because people don't have the money to drive anymore. And 37 local governments have requested a reduction in the gasoline sales tax by 10 cents through June 30, and then the governor wants to extend that past July. But Republicans don't like it in the interim transportation committee and throughout the legislature, because they don't want the whole state to suffer. And some of the rural representatives say all the cities and counties across the state should not suffer from what some cities and counties decide to do. And in fact, it's being reported that municipal officials that did ask for the 10-cent reduction are getting pressure by Republican state legislators to withdraw that request.
Which is interesting because, they were saying that the reason Andy Bashir was doing it was because he was pandering to the voters. And then Donald Trump said that we should reduce the federal gas tax. And again, they say nothing about that because that's just pure hypocrisy on their parts.
People are struggling.
People are struggling. And, the other side of this, too, is other states which have better economies. We think Kentucky gas prices are high. Go to California and look at the gas prices there, or go to New York outside of the Holland Tunnel. Look at the gas prices there. It's like $5 to $6 a gallon. I was looking around recently, and I think it was $3.50 here, or is that high now? But it was in the $3.50 range when I saw it.
It's around $4.40.
Okay.
Because I've been on the road a lot, and when you get closer to Louisville, it goes up higher to about $4.40. And some of the rural areas, you might get it for $3.60, $3.70, $3.80 a gallon. But it's rough.
But it's just another example of when you look at what the Republicans are saying in these elections, or what they say in the course of things, I just can't believe anything they say anymore. I just find it like there's so much hypocrisy in what they're trying to offer us.
Not only hypocrisy, but cruelty. There's another article that we wanted to lift up about how GOP leaders in the state want to prosecute people unlawfully securing medical cannabis, right? And basically, it's just so inhumane because in 2023, the legislature legalized medical marijuana for several chronic illnesses, including cancers, severe pain, epilepsy, seizure disorder, etc. And then in early June, Bashir signed an executive order to expand it. And here's what he wants to expand it to: terminal illness, sickle cell anemia, ALS, Parkinson's disease, HIV, AIDS, Huntington's disease, muscular dystrophy, wasting syndrome, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, neuropathies, severe arthritis, fibromyalgia, and glaucoma. And they're having a fit about this expansion. It's just so cruel. So you're going to close 42 rural hospitals. People are going to be in more pain. They're not going to have treatment, and they won't even be able to access medical marijuana.
Right. But the other side of this, too, is look at the donations, and it's probably coming from the
bourbon
pharmaceutical industry. So, we'll have people not being treated with marijuana, but we'll have higher incidence of drug overdoses because of
alcoholism. Exactly. For sure.
Fentanyl hasn't gone away.
Right.
The abuse of barbiturates hasn't gone away. All the antidepressants and painkillers that were given during the drug overdose phase in this country, that's still there. But there's this denial of scientific proof that's constant with the Republican Party. And look at the other states that have legalized marijuana, and this is in Kentucky, medical marijuana, that's a very narrow category, and you have to meet certain qualifications in order to go and buy whatever you want to buy. Go to other states, go to California, go to New York, go to Illinois. You just walk in, give them your ID, and you walk out with whatever you want. Is that the right way to do it? Not necessarily, but it's not as restrictive as what the government here is giving us. And the thing, too, is that there's always talk about what industries Kentucky can benefit from. And everyone knows that this has been a big grower of pot back in forever. The whole cornbread mafia thing, that was all a big pot thing. And now I don't know if it's the same company, but there's now a cornbread hemp distributor.
Yeah.
And so
that's Jim Higdon who wrote the book.
See, so it's not like this is something that we aren't aware of in this state because it's something that's been in this state forever. It is something about, I don't understand the blindness of the legislators here, because they're talking about generating revenue. That's an easy revenue generator. Colorado gets money from it. California does. All the states that have legalized it.
Yeah, Illinois, Michigan.
And I'm sure that when they legalized it, they weren't thinking, oh, we're going to legalize this because we want people to go out and get high all the time. They are legalizing it because they see this is a revenue source. We can tax this.
Well, and interestingly, as I said, I was on a road trip all around, and I'll tell you more about it, but Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. And it wasn't until I came back to my neighborhood in Old Louisville that I started smelling weed, from fellow drivers, right? It's everywhere here. So, people are getting it illegally and driving with it. And, the data show that when you legalize it, the usage doesn't even go up.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the criminalization and all that stuff doesn't happen.
Well, the criminalization is another way to just fill up our prisons.
With black people.
Well, yeah, essentially that's what that is. But, the things that we can do in the state to make people's lives better are out there. And, you go and look what other states and what other cities are doing and saying. And, as much as people in Kentucky hate New York City is, you looked at the reaction of people in New York City this week because of just a basketball team. And it was just a city that was in rapture this whole week. And they've got a mayor that they really are interested in, and he has the support of everyone in the city.
Not everyone. I mean, I have friends that are affluent who are very frightened of him.
Right, but
because he's a socialist,
Well, right. That's because he's Arabic.
And they want him. They don't want to be taxed on their multiple properties.
But that's the thing. If you tax them on their multiple properties, it has no effect on their quality of life. Because if you're a billionaire and someone's going to tax you 50%, if you can't live on $500 million, there's nothing you can say that even generates any kind of sympathy. And let's not forget, we started this podcast saying that there is now a human on this planet who's worth $1 trillion.
Right.
And that's just absurd.
We also saw an article, this is in the Kentucky Lantern, about how Kentucky's open door on government transparency is closing. So House Bill 520 took place, that passed last year, which fundamentally restricts Kentuckians' right to access records in a criminal investigation. And then in this past April, the Kentucky Supreme Court issued a ruling narrowing the definition of what constitutes a public record in ways that open a significant loophole for officials who wish to conduct government business out of public view. So you've got this consolidation of money and power with very uber wealthy white men. And at the same time, you've got this attack on our democracy, which here in Kentucky and probably other states is a pattern, right? So, it's important for a democracy to share a commitment to the principle that government must be transparent and accountable. And that means that all levels of government needs to be responsive to taxpayers who fund it, shining light on corrupt contracts and illegal secret meetings, but all of that is completely being turned over in Kentucky. And I just want to say that, the public's right to know is not a mere courtesy extended by government. It is a condition of self-governance. And that condition is now being renegotiated, and the public is not at the table.
Right. And the thing about these sunshine laws or disclosure laws, they're called different things in different states. This is not necessarily only an effort to keep the records out of the hands of the public. It's also mainly a way to keep the records out of the hands of the media.
Right.
Because, the individual can go and to look at these records and without a media platform to put them on, it's not going to, the word doesn't extend. Whereas at a news organization, and I've been through this loads of times over the years, you can have someone who's going to go to the county or to the city or whatever government entity you're dealing with, and they'll get the records and they'll painstakingly go through all these records to see what's actually happening. It's what happened when the Spotlight team was in Boston and they did the investigation of the Catholic Church and the child pornography there, or the child molesting that was taking place there. In San Francisco, they did it this year by looking at records on how insurance companies weren't paying disaster victims after wildfires. Just, these are the kinds of records that the state of Kentucky is now trying to hide from people.
Right.
And if you don't know why these things are happening, or if you don't understand why certain things are happening in your communities, and you don't have access to public records, you're not going to find out what the motivation was by the people who passed these things. And, we were talking about the data center issue. One of the things about data centers is that what's going on is that there are land purchases all around these data center areas. And let's say there's a public official who decides, I'm going to buy a couple of 100 acres where I know this data center is going to be, but I don't want people to know this. That the law that Amy just described is exactly what this kind of politician wants. Just the ability to do something, public theft in essence.
Right.
And to get away with it without people being able to look through records.
Right.
I think I was watching a broadcast recently about an Oklahoma board supervisor or something, and there was talk about a data center in that person's area, and turns out he had bought a couple of 100 acres before the vote, and then the vote passes, and all of a sudden these couple of 100 acres he bought cheaply are now worth a lot of money. So there are these things that we should be tuned into, and what Amy just described in this hiding, essentially, of government records this is a way for corrupt politicians to make more money without anyone ever knowing. So that's why these kind of laws are bad for the public and really just bad for decent governance.
Right. And, in terms of data centers, I've been looking at this article again in the Kentucky Lantern. This is by Catherine Hargraves on June 5th. And a bunch of environmental organizations talk about having a long-term plan and having local input. And some of the kinds of questions in terms of environmental protection and energy standards are, will there be enough water for the county's projected development? Should cooling water be recycled? Should utilities pass construction costs along to ratepayers? Should data centers be bonded to pay for dismantling them if they go bust? And what about confidential business information and non-disclosure agreements? So all of this really affects us. It affects our pocketbooks. It affects the water that we're drinking. It affects our, just our pleasure of, one of the things about Kentucky that's so unique is how beautiful it is. The land, the rolling hills, all the streams, and these data centers. I mean, it's really bad.
Right. Well, they're going to be taking over land, and the thing is, there is a lot of land in Kentucky that's untouched, which, it's a temptation for a lot of corporations, because if there's untouched lands, that means that they can do whatever they want, which also means that the people who live in those areas are going to, their voices aren't going to be heard when someone takes over, when a plant decides they're going to take over acres and acres of space. So, we have these green areas like around Bernheim Forest, and I've noticed that there's like UPS has bought up a lot of property and is building these huge, I don't know, I guess they're like warehouses, but I don't know, I wouldn't know a data center if I saw it driving by it, but these are huge amounts of space being taken up by various corporations. And, it's, again, the people who live in these rural areas aren't going to have their voices heard, because honestly, they're voting for Republican legislators. The Republican legislators don't necessarily serve their interest, and they're just going to be out of luck when something bad happens.
Right. I also was looking at Al Mohler, who is the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, which is headquartered here in Louisville. And in an article in the Courier Journal on June 14th, this is an opinion piece by a woman pastor at Highland Baptist Church, which is very affirming of all peoples, a lot of LGBTQIA folks in there. Anyway, so just recently at the convention, Al Mohler spoke out against female pastors and led a measure inviting the Southern Baptist Convention to go even further in condemning female pastors and disfellowshipping churches led by them. So, is this a God thing, a Jesus thing, or is this an Al Mohler thing? And what do you think the motive is, Jesse?
Well, it's... First of all, if you look at evangelical Christians, they don't believe in the teachings of Jesus.
Right.
So there's just this hostility to their fellow man. There's this sense of revenge. It's almost like an Old Testament kind of vengeance that they talk about, although they say that they follow the teachings of Jesus. And it's for the Southern Baptist Seminary, to me it sounds like they just want to reaffirm that the only ones who have voices in this movement are white Christian males.
Right.
And, if a woman dares to speak up, she should be ostracized. And if anyone follows her, they should be banished as well. So they're creating this bubble of intolerance that is very scary, and it just doesn't. There doesn't seem to be any benefit for it other than let's keep our perception of who should be in charge.
Right.
Just let's reiterate that, and whoever disagrees with us, we're going to banish.
Right. And Mohler, he defines gender roles, men as God's leaders and women as men's subservient helpers. And the problem, not only with respect to going to a faith-based organization that has female pastors and all the good that could do, but it also contributes to the ongoing crisis of domestic abuse, sexual assault, and sexual misconduct in churches, homes, seminaries, and denominations. So, it really is it's anti-Christ is really what it is.
Right. Anti-family. Mm-hmm. It's anti a lot of things, but there is a reason why these denominations are losing members, and they're losing members because they're out of touch with what's going on in reality or in humanity, and it's unfortunate that we're going through this phase in this country where people's humanity is doubted just for being different, but it's what people are being taught in certain churches today. So there's no way to feel good about what's going on, and it's just another step in how the church is losing relevance
Right.
for a lot of people. I think if you look at the numbers, it's been a steady increase in non-believers, just across all religions,
Right.
and the splintering of churches into different religions is also questionable, because the Southern Baptists will say that if you follow us, this is your ticket to heaven or whatever. So in their view, what Catholics are doing aren't going to send them to heaven. So that's, it's like, whose Jesus is the better Jesus, or whose religious figure is the better religious figure. I just don't understand why especially a Christian church organization is so dedicated to maintaining oppression. It just
Right.
is very interesting.
Right. So, I saw an article in Louisville Public Media on June 11th that solar generated more electricity than coal in May nationwide amid Trump investment in coal plants. But for now, coal is still the dominant fuel for electricity in Kentucky. And then it said that solar generated 12.8% of the country's electricity last month, while coal declined at 12.2%. But earlier this month, the U.S. Department of Energy awarded $500 million to 13 coal plants nationwide to keep them on the grid longer. So it's like even the good stuff, like they're combating all the good stuff and propping up bad stuff. I just, again, it's all about the money for the people that own these corporations.
Right.
It's certainly, and I want to just say, I was in West Virginia in coal mining country, and I am telling you, there is such abject poverty continuing in West Virginia. Yeah, the company stores are closed, and I took some pictures of those, but still, people are barely scraping by, and there is so little economic development. The downtown stores that used to be open, they're all vacant. The housing is really substandard. It was depressing.
It's depressing, and 70% of Virginia voted for Trump in the
West Virginia. Yeah.
Voted for Trump in the last election.
Yeah.
So it's another example of people who are really suffering, making bad choices in terms of their leadership. I'm not going to say if you elect a Democrat, everything turns to flowers and bouquets immediately. No, there's going to be a lot of work involved, but at least there is a sense of someone caring about you.
Yeah.
That we're not seeing in this current government or in current GOP delegations. There's this this sense of we're going back to religion now, but there's their golden rule is now seeming to be do unto others before they do unto you, as opposed to do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yeah.
There's just this
Get out your shotgun to prevent anyone from doing anything unto you.
Right. Yeah. So that's just more examples of people making uninformed choices, and it's again, I keep saying this, but the election, for anyone to say that there wasn't a clear choice in the last presidential election is just absurd.
Right.
That shows that there's an irresponsibility on that person's part, because they just were too lazy to pay attention to what was going on. And every election is like that. Right now, even if the last election was the worst of two choices, if that was your sentiment about that, I'm going to make the worst of two choices, how can you make the worst of the worst choice? That's, it was pretty obvious what the choices were, but there's this thing where a majority of Americans didn't want a black woman as president, and that's the only reason.
Yeah, and as we approach this 250th, what is that, a sesquicentennial of the country? 250th?
No, sesquicentennial is 150.
150. Anyway, 250 years of this violent country, and what are we doing? What do we have is this, what is it called? MMA fighting on the front lawn of the White House, and just guys, you know what it feels like to me? Ancient Rome and the Colosseum. And the Colosseum is right there on the White House lawn.
See, I wouldn't even go that far, because I think that's an insult to ancient Rome. I think there's the best comparison would be the movie Idiocracy. It was a Mike Judge movie,
Yeah.
and the theme was that the most mediocre person in America is put in hibernation, accidentally wakes up 300 years later, and it turns out he's the smartest person on the planet. And the thing about Idiocracy, which is really scary now, is that there are certain scenes that remind me of what is happening today. Like the president in Idiocracy is an MMA fighter,
Right.
and it's like he rips off his shirt while he's giving speeches. He's threatening to beat up people, and there's scenes of the White House where it just looks like a wreck. It looks like some place out in a country with cars that are disassembled and the windows are broken.
Post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, but then you take an aerial view of the White House today, and Trump has knocked out a building.
Right.
He's put up this stupid
Arena.
octagon in the middle of the White House lawn, which, he's already gotten rid of the Rose Garden that the Kennedys made famous. He's already desecrated buildings by putting his name on them, and fortunately they took it off the Kennedy Center this
Right.
weekend. But there's this, the amount of stupidity coming out of this White House is overwhelming. And it's bad enough that they're stupid. They're stupid and they're evil.
And they're greedy.
They're greedy.
And we need to continue to be following the money. I mean, who's paying? Well, I saw Mark Zuckerberg's face in the crowd of the fights last night on the front lawn.
I don't know, or or things like what did Amazon do, where they did the Melania documentary for X millions of dollars, or what's CBS doing by taking off Colbert and essentially screwing over 60 Minutes and the whole CBS News division.
Yeah.
This is the example of this is what happens when oligarchs take over a country.
And we are seeing him wanting to consolidate power into military rule for sure. I like ending our podcast by talking about things that we can do, because it's really important that we don't lose sight of what individuals can do, especially when we organize and we're together. I do want to mention that in Louisville, the next Community Defense Network training is on Zoom June 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. And there will be other Zoom trainings August 27th and October 22nd. So if coming in person was a barrier, now we're bringing the training to you via Zoom. And I would encourage you, if you're on social media, look up Louisville SURJ, or just Google Louisville SURJ, and the website will pop up for you. This is an organization that is highly organized. You will not feel like you are wasting time, and increasing numbers of social service organizations, particularly serving our Latinx population and other immigrants, are asking for us to accompany them in their work. So please check that out. I also wanted to mention that, as I said, I took this road trip, and I started in the Smoky Mountains and went hiking. And my biggest accomplishment on the whole trip was hiking an 8-mile trail, mostly uphill on the Appalachian Trail, to a place called Charlie's Bunyan. And it has these fantastic views of the Smoky Mountains, and I just felt so accomplished to do that. And then we drove up the Blue Ridge Parkway, and again, the Blue Ridge Parkway a lot of times can be pretty congested, which is bad, of course. But we really faced very little traffic, very few tourists out and about. And we ended in the New River Gorge, which I think is the nation's newest national park, and went hiking there. Saw the largest arch steel span bridge in the Western Hemisphere that is there in West Virginia in the New River Gorge. It's really a beautiful bridge. The whole place is gorgeous. I went whitewater rafting on Saturday. It was really fun. But in staying in those, coal mining towns that are near the New River Gorge there, I'm telling you, the poverty was really, it just makes me so sad that there's still no political will, especially in Appalachia, where extraction has been the theme, right? Let's abuse people, fight unions, kill people with methane buildup in the coal mines, and this stuff is not trickling down to the people, I assure you. So anyway, it was a great trip, and I did also want to mention, Jesse, that there's a really fun Bluegrass Festival with fantastic talent coming to Owensboro next week, June 24 through 27, and it's called the Romp Bluegrass Festival. And if you like bluegrass, I am telling you, I'm With Her is coming, which is a super group of Sarah Watkins, Sarah Jarosz, and Aoife O'Donovan. They are unbelievable. I think they just got a Grammy too. And the Punch Brothers is coming. That's Chris Thiele. You might know Chris from Garrison Keillor's show. What was that called? Oh my God.
Prairie Home Companion.
Prairie Home Companion. He took over after Garrison Keillor. Ricky Skaggs and the Kentucky Thunder, Del McCurry Band, Dan Tyminski Band. Dan Tyminski is the guy that sang the lead in Old Brother, Where Art Thou? And the big song that made the charts there. So you might want to, and local Michael Cleveland is going to be there. Anyway, the music's going to be awesome, and I invite all of you to join me there in Owensboro next week.
Yeah, according to its website, there are going to be more than 20 bands over the 4-day period.
Yeah.
So that's...
I'm pumped.
I have to look at what the prices are.
They're not bad.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoy these festivals. I haven't been to one in years, but those are fun. And you've been like hiking and all this other stuff. My hiking is limited to the Louisville area, so I've been doing my walks around town. And we've mentioned this last time, but the I-65 that goes through downtown Louisville is now closed. So I am constantly walking by the entry ramps, and there's still a great deal of confusion going on out there. I have seen like these huge 18-wheelers. I know that they're going to try to make an entry at a certain entrance, and then they see that they can't get there. And it's just like watching this clumsy ballet of elephants trying to get around because they don't know where they're going. They have to back these 18-wheelers up. They're going in circles. It's a mess. There were cops on the first day where all the exits were blocked by one cop car. Now the cars are gone. But one of the enjoyable things about walking now is I can walk by the highway and not hear all the crazy traffic, which means that I'm breathing cleaner air right now. And I'm also like walking past the places where I can see where they've taken the bridge down. Like there's just air where a bridge used to be. So the work is being done. It seems like they've been trying to repair the road forever, and they've been closing off like side streets forever. So
well, I'm noticing a lot of infrastructure improvements happening on the roads on that road trip. A lot of the interstates are under construction, and basically for me as someone who has studied public finance, when to get reelected, you don't look at long-term infrastructure projects, right? And so we don't have the proper tax infrastructure to pay for the kind of maintenance that we need on these roads, on public buildings, et cetera. And now we see a lot of disrepair having to be fixed, which is very expensive. And I think there could be public will to tackle these infrastructure issues and have a tax structure that supports them as well as the families in those communities.
Well, I would say that there is a public will to do this, but again, I'm going to blame the Republican Party for this because, whenever someone talks about bringing on taxes, tax isn't going to like people who don't need it. Taxes are going to make our lives better as residents of a certain specific area. So if we're paying property taxes, we should expect better schools than we have. We shouldn't expect that our property taxes are going to pay for someone's private school, which is what they want to do. And it just everything the Republicans seem to be saying are things that are aimed at making people's lives worse. So I enjoy the fact that I can walk around and see that they're rebuilding the city. It's a huge inconvenience, but at least I know that these repairs are going to last for decades, and people don't look in terms of doing something for the public good today that's going to benefit people for the next 20 or 30 years.
Right.
But we're now, we have to go through this song and dance where Republicans say that we can't afford this, and then other cities or bigger cities, blue cities, show that, oh yeah, you can afford it, and it's not hurting anybody, and it's actually making people's lives better instead of a couple of very rich people who don't need the money anyway. So anyway, that's my sort of rant there. And one thing I want to bring up is the NBA championship.
Yes.
I am a New Yorker. This is after all these years. My heart is in New York. I was raised in Brooklyn, but I've lived in Kentucky. I've lived in Louisville longer than I've lived anywhere. But my first thought process is, when someone asks where you're from, I first think New York, because that's where my formative years were. And so watching the Knicks win the championship this year was just, I really didn't realize it turned off on the NBA for many years. And these are the only games I've watched in a ton of years. And I remember the old days of the Knicks back when they won their last championship 53 years ago with Willis Reed and Walt Frazier, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, and Phil Jackson was one of those Knicks. So 53 years, I don't want to wait another 53 years to see the next championship, but it was really, it was an interesting championship, not in the basketball sense of it, but in the sense of how New Yorkers were actually civil. It's like you think of New Yorkers as just bad people, and they're not. And everybody was really friendly. My brother was saying that he was going to some watch party, and just people that he never met before asked him to take their picture and to be in a picture with them because they were all wearing Knicks jerseys. It was one of these examples where, as far as New Yorkers were concerned, there was no race, there were no ethnic issues. The worst it got during the playoffs was when Trump showed up in Madison Square Garden and screwed over everybody. And, he got the watch parties canceled. He gets booed during the national anthem, and then he falls asleep during the game. And I just feel that if Trump hadn't been at the game, the Knicks would have won it in 4. But he was there. He destroyed the happy mojo, and
he destroys everything.
Yeah. So Knicks in 5. So that was good. And it was, if you had the choice between watching the Knicks in the NBA Finals or watching the octagon on the White House lawn with the MMA fighters, you would have done really better just watching the Knicks, because that was a great series. And
also, the Louisville Kings
Right.
last Saturday won the United Football League championship, defeating the defending champion DC Defenders 27-20 in the United Bowl. And this was their inaugural season, and they're coached by Louisville native Chris Redman. And that's a big deal.
Right, yeah, it is, because it's like we have a professional sport. It's not quite the NFL, but it shows that there's the desire to have sports in Louisville. And, this is a really good town and really greatly located, but the unfortunate reality is that there are teams in Indianapolis and Cincinnati and Nashville. And Louisville is like the teams that are there should be in Louisville, because that's where everyone can congregate, but we don't work that way. And Louisville
And we're in Kentucky. Louisville's in Kentucky, which is really hard for Louisville.
Yeah. So,
Well, it's a beautiful day outside, Jesse. Did you already take your multi-mile walk this morning?
I just did 3.5 miles today.
Just
I'm
3.5
just
miles.
probably going to go out a little later, but
Okay.
as I say, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is.
And let's go out and
Next
shoot the rest of the day.
podcast is going to be a little while longer. I'm doing a bit more traveling, but when we're back, it will be number 30.
Right, I'm excited.
Me
I
too.
didn't know it's interesting to see the numbers just keep piling up. Like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Till next time. So long, people.
Bye.
Our closing music is by John Chamberlain.